Devil Daggers is the first time since Dark Souls where I've initially dismissed the entire thing as pointlessly difficult for the sake of it, and then gone back to it multiple times to try and understand it, given up entirely again, and then finally, years later, curiosity piqued by the constant praise, given it another try, and suddenly had everything click into place as it should do. And then that's all I want to play forever. Don't get me wrong, Devil Daggers is difficult. The odds are painfully stacked against you from the start, and they only shift further in that direction the longer you play. You will die. The game has a single achievement for surviving 500 seconds in this low-res hellscape of an arena, and only 0.3% of players have ever reached that point, so yeah. Move over, Dark Souls, we're stealing your subtitle. Let's clarify something though. What is Devil Daggers and what is it not? Devil Daggers is an FPS, but it's also a bullet hell shoot 'em up. It's not an FPS in the same vein as Doom or Quake, in which you're progressing from one place to the next. This is a wave-based shooter in which you're stuck fending off constantly spawning spooky skulls, most of which will be spat out by betentacled horror jobbies. In order to survive, you need to master the art of shooting everything in sight, constantly moving and bunny hopping your way around the arena, understanding enemy movements and patterns, prioritizing targets, and understanding when not to shoot. Everything you see can be killed, and everything you see can kill you. There's no health meter here. You get hit, you get dead, and one minor mistake will result in you starting all over again, booted back to the high score screen where you can lament the fact you haven't reached a new high score in weeks because you're being absolutely useless again. When I first played the game back on release in 2016, I put approximately 20 minutes into the game before I decided it wasn't for me. I liked the weird, grim, dark, low-res aesthetic, but I didn't understand how anyone was supposed to get past even the first wave of enemies. Needlessly difficult. That was my knee-jerk response, and that knee-jerk response kept coming back to me every single time I picked it up. And I kept picking it back up because I kept seeing that overwhelmingly positive and thinking, there must be something I'm not understanding. What is it I'm not getting? When I last came back to what is now my current obsession, I still didn't fall in love, not initially. The only thing that kept me playing, in fact, was a lone high score in the Friends high score table. A lone score that I decided one day I had to beat because I just wanted to be better than at least this one single person sat in my high score chart.
It will be mine. Oh yes, it will be mine.
The high scores in this game are merely the length of time you've managed to last in the arena in one go. So I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and after an hour or two of practicing, I managed to do it. I just pipped them by a few seconds, and I'd done that because I'd finally began to learn what this game actually is. So it's not quite an FPS, and it's not quite a shoot 'em up, and it's also not quite an arena shooter. It's something familiar while feeling like completely its own thing. And that thing has a flow that feels like an end-to-end adrenaline rush for, hopefully, at least 60 to 120 seconds before you die again. Each game is as long as you last, and you ain't gonna last long until you get your bearings with what you should be doing. Each time you begin, the level starts the same way. A spawner appears, the spawners will always spit out a bunch of small skulls which float after you, and a big skull which hovers around the arena before sometimes chasing after you, usually when you least expect it. To remove the spawners, you need to shoot the red gems, usually 1 or 2, but increasing if you actually make it further than I can. And these gems are absolutely vital in order to power up your daggers, which can be used continuously or as a single-click shotgun blast. Only, here's the twist. You can pick them up by walking over them, which is extremely inefficient, or you can stop shooting and let them home in on you. The game then becomes a dance between shooting and not shooting, finding a safe time to stop for a moment and hoover up your gems before they eventually vanish. Or worse, get absorbed by a giant spider skull which steals gems and turns them into horrible spider babies, because that's the next thing that will begin to spawn in. And then there's this thing, which looks like it's been half-inched from Panzer Dragoon, a giant gem-filled worm that flies around the arena just begging you to shoot your way through its treasure chest. Literally. Get it? Treasure chest. Only in order to do that successfully, you're going to need time. And there's all these skulls after you, and more spawners are coming up. And look, now there's more giant spiders, and what the hell is that thing? And dead again. Time to restart. You may be wondering how on earth you're supposed to keep track of this flood of enemies, and incredibly, you'll be relying a lot on the wonderful sound design. Spawners, for instance, give off this sweaty noise. And you'll know when a giant spider skull monstrosity is coming into play because of this creepy flesh-crawling earworm. Being chased by a horny skull that wants to stick its bony forehead into your butt crack will start laughing maniacally as it gets closer. It's learning these little pieces of information through consistent attempts that gets you wired into the game, and that's really when you know that you're hooked, when you can tell the difference between the sound of a giant spider monster and the sound of skull-spewing tentacles. That's the point where you've played Devil Daggers just enough to work your way into the 100 and 200 second mark, and Lord knows what I'll be hearing when I reach 300 or 400. I'm not an expert at Devil Daggers, I likely never will be, considering the insane scores on show in the top 10 leaderboard, but for a game which centers itself around learning and understanding the core mechanics and patterns to the point where you feel like the mouse and keyboard are an extension of your body, the game cleverly allows you to watch the run of anyone on that leaderboard, to see how they did it, to understand their tactics, to question whether they are in fact human or some sort of infernal machine, because how the hell are you still alive, you absolute psychopath? Devil Daggers won't be for everyone, but then I also thought it wasn't for me. It's a game that takes a small core loop of time, and it expects the best of you, and it rewards nothing less than the best. Each time you increment that score a little higher, you'll feel like you've not just achieved something, but you've learned how to achieve it in the process. Nothing feels accidental, and while things seem inherently unfair when you first begin to play it, you'll soon realise that Devil Daggers is consistently fair. It is the same unholy mass of enemies for every single player, and you just haven't understood how to stop yourself succumbing to that yet. And your climb up that leaderboard, one step at a time, feels more earned than most things I've played in the past few years. It is retro in aesthetic and in design. It's you versus others, but mostly it's you versus yourself. In a world where games just keep getting bigger and bigger, it's nice to see a game focus a core gameplay loop to such a degree that I'm putting hours into a game that technically lasts on a scale of seconds. Sometimes a handful, sometimes a handful more, but always an exciting handful.